Sankai Tore slaughtered 115 foals in give a warm welcome to Ablai Khan, who had recently returned from China. There are 54 versions of the main meat meal in Kazakh tradition.
Dasturkhan is a sacred concept.
A well-known American scientist visited Kazakhstan. He studied Kazakh life and culture. As a result, whenever tried to pay the check for meals, the Kazakhs refused to accept payment. He wanted to pay for transportation, but he was once again refused. The scientist then came to the conclusion that people to whom you can come without money exist. These people are Kazakhs. A guest comes and with him the blessing, the Kazakhs say. In the ancient Turkic philosophical tradition, the category Qut has multiple meanings: life force, spirit, happiness, prosperity, good. As a result, it is common for Kazakhs to welcome a visitor outside the house and enter after the visitor has done so. According to popular belief, the owner ensures that Qut arrives with the guest in this way. Seeing off the visitor, the owner of the house also goes out after him, closing the door so that Qut stays in the house.
Бұл мысалы қазаққа қатысты айтар болсақ, бұл қонақжайлық деген қазақтың дүниетанымы.
Kazakhs regard hospitality as an essential component of their worldview. This is a distinguishing attribute of the nation which derives from a legendary outlook on life. In ancient times, for example, Kazakhs believed that the guest brought all the good things to the house. As a result, he was dubbed Qutты Qonaq, which translates as blessed guest.
Қазаққа қонақжайлық тән. Айтады, қонақ құда келеді.
Kazakhs say when a blessed guest arrives, a ship brings twins. Out of 40, at least one may be Khazir, who will bring happiness.
Шабат дейді. Немесе 40-тың бірі қадыр дейді.
40-тың бірі қадыр деп отыр.
People often confuse the prophets Khidir and Khizir. Who is Khidir? This is the prophet who brings happiness. Khizir, in turn, is the prophet of the earth. On Nauruz, when the equinox comes, the prophet Khizir descends from the sky. People have valued human traits such as responsiveness, friendliness, and generosity of heart since time immemorial, traveling in winter, spring, summer, and fall in pursuit of the best pastures for livestock. As a result, the Kazakh never felt lonely while wandering the vast steppe. He was confident that he would meet generous people along the route who would not refuse him a warm welcome. The origins of hospitality are depicted in various ways in ancient legends. One of them is linked to the notorious Alasha Khan. According to folklore, the Khan announced his will to his 3 sons before his death. At the same time, he stated that he had divided his land into 4 parts. Each of the sons received a portion of the estate, and the wise ruler reserved the 4th part of the inheritance for the guest. Yinshe translates to share in Kazakh. When distributing the inheritance owing to children and relatives, the Kazakhs considered the yinshe due to the guest. As a result, the Kazakhs raised hospitality to the status of a particular ceremonial with unbreakable laws and foundations. In other words, hospitality was an inherent aspect of traditional Kazakh moral and ethical principles. Kazakhs have a special ethics of hospitality. The guest was greeted with open arms, expressing joy and respect. According to the Kazakhs, the traveler does not look at food but at hospitality. First, you must greet the guest with a smile. Then assist him in dismounting from his horse. Pour water over his hands and seat him in the most honorable place, placing soft pillows for comfort.
Төрге отырғызып, жайландырып отырғаннан кейін оның атын жаңағы апарып байлайды. Адамның өзіне тамақ ас беріп жатқан кезде.
The guest's horse is also given special attention. The horse is tied to a stable and given hay and water while the traveler eats in the house. Tradition holds that one should never offend a guest, otherwise happiness and prosperity will flee. Khidir will leave with the guest and sorrow will follow.
Босағамыз жаңағы құрайды, дастарханымыздан дән тартылады дейді.
Жалпы қонақ
Typically, the guest tried to go into the home of someone who was wealthy. The size and appearance of the yurt determined a person's rank. As a result, the guest tried not to burden the poor.
жағдайы бар, қонақ күте алатын адамның үйіне түсуге тырысқан.
Step diplomacy is illustrated by hospitality. The generously set dastarkhan encouraged the interlocutors to engage in sincere dialogue. The steppe dweller was a master at developing cordial, trusted relationships, increasing the number of potential allies.
Бізде көп векторлы саясат дейміз, соның бір өзегі.
We know that Kazakhstan follows a multi-vector strategy with tolerance as one of its guiding principles. We are a country that fosters the concept of agreement and compromise. From this point of view, the hospitality tradition reflects our global status. As a result, Dastarkhan is more than just a variety of food and fun gatherings. Dastarkhan is a sacred concept. The words spoken at the Dastarkhan have a special meaning. An honored guest will not behave imprudently or defiantly. The owner of the property the house owner provides such a nice atmosphere that any dispute situations are avoided, while also contributing to the creation of friendship and mutual understanding.
Sankai Tore slaughtered 115 foals and gave a warm welcome to Ablai Khan, who had recently returned from China. Foal in translation from Kazakh means Thai, hence the name of the area, Thai Soiran, the place where the foals were slaughtered. The guest is older than your grandfather, says a folk proverb that emphasizes the special status of a person who is specially invited or who happens to be in the house of a steppe dweller. In this case, the guest, regardless of age, was seated in the most honorable place, Tur. The house owners did not seat higher than the guests. These are the etiquette guidelines. Each seat at the table was given to a family member in a traditional culture. Women did not sit higher than males, younger people did not sit higher than older people, and the daughter-in-law never sat higher than the mother-in-law. The son-in-law does not sit in a position of honor and does not give a blessing. It was suggested that the guests wash their hands before being served a hot dish. This task was assigned to a young man who went around the visitors in a circle, pouring water from a jug into their hands. He held a basin in his left hand and a towel over his shoulder. The guest also followed the established rules. He did not step over the dastarkhan, did not step on the edge of the tablecloth, and did not eat while lying on his side. He ate only with his right hand. The one who eats with his left was considered an uneducated person. It was forbidden to pick one's nose, ears, and scratch during the meal. Such behavior showed lack of culture. In addition, it was not allowed to interrupt the guest's story. Even questions were asked according to the status of family members. For example, the host's wife was the first to not enter into a conversation with a guest. The man started the conversation first. A woman could not ask a guest a question only with the permission of her husband. Guests in the folk tradition were categorized into types and given titles based on the situation and purpose of the visit. For example, Qulghama Qonak, or gluttonous guest, was seen as the most impolite. He usually followed the house where food was prepared for visitors and emerged unexpectedly when the dish was served. In turn, Qadrma Qonak is a visitor who has traveled from distance to visit his relatives. Khudayi Qonak is a random guest, often an unknown traveler who decided to stop and rest from a long journey. As for the category of guests called Arnaya Qonak, these are specially invited guests on a specific occasion. The cattle were not always slaughtered in honor of the guest, however they always left sabagha. These are the most delicious pieces of meat that the owner kept especially for the guests. In summer, the guest was served tender lamb meat, and in winter, large dishes of horse meat, beef, or camel meat. The Kazakhs considered the dastarkhan sacred. There are 54 versions of the main meat meal in Kazakh tradition. For example, a girl's dastarkhan, a matchmaker's dastarkhan, a hero's dastarkhan, a newly made bride's dastarkhan, a festive dastarkhan, and so on. Each of them is special in its own way. Sultan Qunanbay, the father of the famed Abay, was offered one of these dishes. Qunanbay once met a bee named Shaku Yesilbayula on the way. According to ethnographer Bolat Bopayula, following the ceremonial welcome, the bee invited the Sultan to the dastarkhan, which had been laid in memory of the deceased only son. The invitation was then accepted by Qunanbay, who stated, "We will not step over the soul of the deceased." After the dastarkhan, Qunanbay was served a special dish. The owner of the house asked the Sultan to give a blessing before the meal. In turn, the surprised Qunanbay said, "I saw many different dishes, got acquainted with the traditions of different peoples, but I see a dish like that for the first time." After these words, he looked inquiringly at the person sitting next to him, because he was confused, not knowing what kind of blessing he must give before such a dish. In response to the question of the Sultan, everyone answered that it was kezhim tabak, which is served once every 100 years to the most respected guests, khans, sultans. A whole ram was placed in one dish. The head was in the center of the dish, covered with pieces of meat. For such a dish, the blessing is given 3 times. Ethnographers provide fascinating facts regarding the customary guest menu. The presence of 4 components in the meals, known as tört aras, was required. The word aras denotes good, happiness, sharing, and luck. Each aras was labeled with a different hue. Red was for meat meals, while white was for dairy products. Green denoted vegetables and fruits. Cereal dishes were also required to be present. Dastarkhan, on which all 4 components were displayed, represented prosperity and abundance. The covered dastarkhan was well liked by the guest. The presence of tört aras, which meant knowledge of the people's fundamental traditions, was very important. The dishes determined the hostess of the house's knowledge, the degree of education, the culture of the daughter-in-law, and in general, the attitude of the ladies of this hearth toward the guest. If the owner of the home did not like the traveler, the guest protested to the aul or bees elders. The Kazakh who neglected to properly welcome the guest had to make amends with gifts. The principles of hospitality were developed in 1885 at a convention held in the village of Karamola, Semey region. Paragraph 51, for example, defines the amount of a fine in the form of a horse as well as a chapan for someone who fails to slaughter livestock in honor of the guest, thus upsetting him. If the guest discovered the absence of at least one part of the slaughtered cattle, which must certainly be in the main dish, this was considered a violation of etiquette. The rich, the elders of the aul, the khans, the sultans, the bees, who especially strictly assessed the dastarkhan in case of non-compliance with the steppe laws, punished the owner with 9 fines, sometimes with the use of physical violence. The ritual marking the entrance of the guest was accompanied by performance of songs, cues, epic works. The musical portion of the event was traditionally began by local children. Then it was the turn of the guest. If the guest didn't have any special talents, he was compelled to imitate the voice of a donkey or fowl. However, because Kazakhs are predominantly musical people, this custom was rarely observed.
Ал енді ол қонақтың жаңағы өзіне
It's time to say goodbye to the guest. The owner examines the traveler's horse, interested in where he's heading. If the road is long and the horse is exhausted from the previous trip, then the owner of the house offered him his horse and looked after his horse until the guest returned, watered it, fed it, so that the animal regained strength. Or the traveler left with both horses to alternate them along the way. The Kazakhs called this tradition Lauga Beru.
Оны лау деп атайды.
Before saying goodbye to the guest, the house owner inquired whether the traveler had any special requests, buyumtai. The guest might request anything except a horse, a weapon, or a dog, according to the custom. In turn, the owner of the house gave away whatever was to the traveler's pleasure and escorted him with the best wishes for a safe journey.
Мысалы айталық, мен ойлаймын, қазақта ғана бар, мысалы қазір көңіл шай деген бар.
Kazakhs have a good tradition. It is called көңіл шай. Literally, tea that uplifts the mood.
Тағдыр дейміз. Ал енді жақын адамдар, немесе ол сол адамды сыйлайтын адамдар, өзінің пейілін.
The core of the custom is that relatives and friends alternately invite a family that has lost a loved one to visit over the year.
Қонақтыққа шақыру арқылы көңіл шай дейді жаңағы.
As a result, they try to be there for him through this most trying time. This is yet another example of hospitality.
Дастархан жасалады. Бұл да мына қонақ жайлылықтың бір көрінісі.
Қазақтың дәстүрлі жүйесінде
Years after the death of a loved one, an as is arranged. That is a commemoration. They also invite guests. But before the commemoration, about a year in advance, those who can contribute to it are invited. This tradition is called Sawon Aitu.
көрші ауылдардан, рулардан жылу арнайы көмегін сауын айтылған кезде олар көрші ауылдар, көрші рулар өзінің
Relatives come from all over, bringing with them kumis, shubat. Someone comes with batırs, improvisational poets, singers, instrumentalists. Thus, preparation for as is carried out. During the commemoration, yurts are set up and horsemen are assigned to each of them to honor the guests.
сондай өзінің ерекше сан-салтанатын өтетін болған.
On such a scale, Trizna contributed to the upkeep of the poor. As a result, humanity manifested itself in relation to everyone, regardless of social rank.
Біздер мына сайын далада өмір кешіп, тұрмыс кешіп, өмір сүріп.
Kazakh soul is as vast as the endless steppe.
Ауада, сылдыраған бұлақтың жанында, жағасында, түнде жымыңдаған.
This is a free man who has spent millennia living in tune with nature.
Жатқан сәулесін, арайын көріп келе жатып, сондай киіз үйімізде қалыптасқан.
Listening to bird songs, the murmur of crystal clear streams, seeing the stars move and savoring the sunrise and sunset. Perhaps this is why Kazakh views have always been pure.
Табиғат сияқты сұлу болады.
The Kazakhs believed Tengri bestows blessings on those who welcome the guest well, and hence addressed the ceremony with care. According to experts, hospitality is a manifestation of politeness and courtesy. This is a steppe civilization that has existed since the time of the Saks, Huns, and Turks. The Kazakh hospitality is based on the strengthening of relationships between families, friends, and neighbors. This custom also develops a sense of respect between the older and younger generations, instilling in the next generation valuable attributes such as sociability, friendliness, openness, sincerity, and humanity.